Hey, Zack here, and we've got a true AC/DC deep cut for you in today's video. From the same guys who brought you She's Got Balls, Whole Lotta Rosie, and The Jack, comes their only unironic love song, which they called Love Song. And of course, this is track number 7 on the original High Voltage album. Didn't come out internationally until the Backtracks box set. And this song was actually the A-side on the first single from the album. And as the story goes, the record company wanted something that might appeal to a wider audience, something a little more pop, soft rock oriented. But obviously it was the B-side, Baby Please Don't Go, that really blew up. And yeah, so this is again, an uncharacteristically AC/DC song, but it's got some cool guitar parts, maybe even some acoustic guitar in there. And yeah, it's pretty straight ahead, A minor, C major, some fun guitar parts. So let's crank right on into it. All right, so the intro comprises 2 instrumental parts. And the first part here is basically the lead is playing these fast triplet arpeggios, and the rhythm and underlying harmony is playing some simple whole and half notes. So we're going to start there because that will make the lead parts make more sense. So we're going to start basically by walking up and down an E minor scale. So we're going to start on this E note here on the 7th fret A string, and we're going to walk from the 1 to the 2 to the minor 3, all in whole notes. So that's 1, 2, 3, up to the F sharp, up to the G, and then we're going to go half notes down. And the part repeats. All right, so again, all together. And on the second time through, we're going to hold this G note for 2 bars, and then the entire part repeats a whole step down starting on the D. So again, pretty simple here. Again, playing the 1, the 2, and the flat 3, back down, and then ending on that flat 3 for 2 bars. Now, the third and final part of the riff, again, goes down a whole step to the C, and this time we're going to go from the C up to the E flat, which is the minor 3rd, down to the 2, back up to the minor 3rd, and holding it for the end of the part. So that goes like this. And it lands back on the root, back on the C there. All right, so now that you know the rhythm and underlying harmony parts, you'll see how that influences what's going on here in the lead. And honestly, I could not really get this one up to speed that it is on the recording. Maybe got in the ballpark. I'm not even sure that it's guitar. It almost sounds more like a keyboard or a piano, which would make these arpeggios probably a little bit more easy to play on keys than they are on guitar. But regardless, I'm pretty sure these are the correct notes. So the rhythm and the harmony, as we established, starts on that E, and our highest note that we're going to play in this arpeggio is an E up here on the 12th fret. And basically, we're going to be playing off of a minor triad. All right, so it's going to be a descending arpeggio like so. Thinking in those triplets. Triplet, 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 triplet. So like 4 triplets per bar. And then again, just as we saw how the rhythm goes up to the F sharp, we're just going to play the same arpeggio, moving that highest note up to the F sharp. Up to the G, back to the F sharp, back to the E. All right, so it's all playing off that A minor arpeggio. 14, 13, 12. Classic arpeggio there. All right, so we're kind of playing off the A minor through the first part of the riff, but of course we know that this part repeats, and when that repeats, we're going to shift from an A minor shape to an E minor shape. All here on the 12th fret. Moving up to the F sharp. All right, and so again, because we're holding that G note for 2 bars, we're cranking on that high G note for 2 bars there as well. All right, so the whole thing, or at least that first part of the lead, we're starting in that A minor shape, climbing up, back down, switch, climb up, 2 bars, and then we're just going to play that exact same pattern down a whole step. So coming down to the 10th fret here, we've got this G minor shape. We're walking up. Switch. Walking up. 2 bars. All right, so again, the harmony there, it's kind of interesting how it kind of turns your ear from this G minor to the D minor. All right, same thing that was going on up here, from this A minor to the E minor. All right, so just adding a little twist there with the arpeggios while the rhythm is repeating the riff, essentially. So now we're going to go down to the C harmony here, right? And we're going to start off with the same idea. We're just taking that minor shape and we're bringing it down a whole step to a F minor. And of course, that jumps up to that E flat. So we're going to jump up to the E flat here with the arpeggio. Down, back up, and we end on that C note. So again, these triplet arpeggio patterns are a little tricky to bring up to speed. But as you can kind of see here, I'm basically just matching the highest notes of the arpeggio with the notes that are going on down in the rhythm. You might have to experiment with fingering here. I'm mostly using my ring finger and my pinky finger to catch those highest notes there. So that is the first main instrumental part of the intro. All right, so the second part of the intro kind of follows the same theme of the rhythm kind of playing something simple that is matched in a more, let's say, flashy way by the lead. So again, let's take a look at the rhythm and underlying harmony part first. And I believe this is the only part of this song that was ever played live, at least from what I've heard. And I think AC/DC actually played this riff as their opener in some of their early concerts. And it's a pretty cool riff. So it starts off. It's really as simple as that. So what's going on there? So the first part is an A note, and then on the D string, we're going to go 202, right? So E note, pull off to D, back to the E. Right? So it's just kind of hinting at generally an A power chord. And then we're just going to do the same thing, playing the low E. And then that part repeats one more time. So you can really just think of it as going from an A to an E 2 times. Now after that E to A is played twice, the E is now going to be played again. Going right back to A, back to the E, and then the part ends on A. So really the only trick that goes on there is that E is played through twice there in the middle of the part. And you're going to see that's going to be reflected in the lead part. All right, so for the lead part, we're following that same basic idea of doing some triplet arpeggio ideas. And this shape should be familiar to all of us Angus Young fans. It's a pull-off here on the high E string that is basically a step and a half or a minor third pull-off into an open string. And those are the only 3 places that we're going to play. So for the A, Angus is playing this high C note, pulling off to the A, to the open E. Which of course is outlining an A minor type sound. All right, so that's a quick pull off, and then letting that high E string ring out. Then, when we go down to the E, he's just going to move that down a half step, so that we're starting on the 7th fret, which is our B note. And of course, that's outlining an E major. So we've got this B, G sharp, and E, which is the notes of our E major chord. Back up to the A. Back down to the E. All right, and then that E repeats. Remember when we get to kind of the middle there of the part? So instead of just hanging here, Angus comes all the way up to a 10th position, catching that high D note. So those notes there are D, B, and E, which harmonically sounds out an E7 type sound. Back to the A. Back to the E one more time. Ending on that high A note with the A power chords. That does it for the intro that kind of stands on its own. And then, of course, we're going to get into the more sappier part of Love Song. All right, so now here's where things get romantic. The verse is going to revolve around a 4-chord progression from C major to G major, A minor, back to G major. And so it sounds like Angus is playing the melody that matches the vocal in single notes, and Malcolm is playing some rolling, strumming rhythm parts. So probably is best just to start by learning the melody, which is pretty simple, and it follows the chord progression in chord tones. So it starts off on the C note, all right, so that's the first half. It just really walks up the C major scale. C, D, E, D, C. And then with the G underlying harmony, it just goes B, C, D. Cool? And then when we move to the A minor, all right, so that goes from C note and walks down, B, A, back up, and then for the G, we were just going open G, A, and ending on the B note. So really the only thing to do from here is just to get into a strumming, picking pattern where we emphasize those melody notes with the underlying chords. So all we're doing there is holding this C chord, giving it a little strum, and then playing each melody note and following that up with some picking going down the chord. And so really for that G chord, you can just play all open strings. Moving on to the A minor. All right, so really just make sure that you're allowing those highest notes to ring out. So when you're playing those strums, don't emphasize those high melody notes too early. All right, so pretty simple and fun to play. And I think really the only other embellishment that happens in later verses is it sounds like Malcolm is playing a so that's just a hammer-on from the open D to E note to the open G, and then pulling back off, right? With those kind of longer held chords there to kind of fill up a little bit of space. All right, and from here we'll take a look at the chorus. The chorus is pretty simple. It's just an A minor chord, letting that high E ring out, and then you're gonna play that little embellishment into the G major chord. Same thing, playing that open D hammer on. And you're just playing those back and forth. So the guitar solo is really just a series of licks that target the underlying chord tones. And the rhythm is just going to be playing the chorus from the A minor to G major. So the first note that we hear is this big bend up to the E note here on the G string. And then really we're just going to descend down the G string until we end up with that open G note that lands with the G chord. So once we hit that bend up to E, we're going to bend it back down, and then we're going to go right to that C note. B note, A note, and then pull off B to A to open G. So we're really just going straight on down the A minor scale, and again, ending with that G note. So it flows very nicely from that A minor tonality to the G. So for this second lick, again, over that A minor, we're going to bend up to that A note on the 8th fret, which is a G note on the B string, up to the A. And then we're going to catch that high A note on the E string, 5th fret, down to the B string for the E note, and then 8th fret, B string for that G, again, just matching the chord tones, going from an A minor idea to landing on that G note when the harmony changes to G. So this next lick, again, we're thinking about A minor, and we're going to bend this B note on the B string a half step up to a C. Bending it back down. And we're going to bend it back down, hinting at the B, back to our home base of A. Hitting that C note, A to C, back to A, and then we're going to bend that C up to the D, that is, of course, a chord tone of G major. The next lick comes up to our 15th fret position here. We're just going to bend on the B string, this D note up to E, which of course is targeting the 5th of A minor. Releasing, hitting that C. Then we're going to jump up to this F note here on the 18th fret, bend it up a whole step to G. Of course, targeting the G major. All right, so this next repeating lick, we're just up here at the high A minor pentatonic box. We're going to bend this G note up to an A and release it down to the E here on the 17th fret, all there on the B string. All right, and you're just going to be playing that over the A, over the G, and the very last part of the solo, the rhythm part, or at least the drums, kind of start to play in these kind of straight eighths. Only other thing that happens with the rhythm harmony, at least, is that the last two chords are actually going to be an F and an E. All right, so a classic cadence down. And then when that happens, we're just going to go down the scale from A minor, starting with that high bend up to that A. So starting with that high A, down to the G, right. Ending with that D note up to that E. And just in case you didn't get enough of the verse, they're going in for one more that is twice as long. And through the last chorus, Angus throws in a few more lead licks in between the vocal lines. And again, we're really just kind of working off those licks from the main solo. So this first one is just grabbing hold of that D note there on the G string, bending it, releasing it, and bending it up again to kind of target the fifth of A minor, which is that E note. And then on the G note, the G chord, A to B to the open G. The next lick, again, follows that same pattern of working out of the A minor and then hitting a chord tone of G. So from our 8th fret, we're just going to bend, release, and bend up again into the root there. So 8th fret, B string. Of course, catching that E on the 5th fret. And then on the G chord, we're just going to bend up to a D note. I think here on the 13th fret, B string. Bending up to, hitting that D note there. Again, matches the chord change as we go. And for the next pair of licks, we're going to stay up here around this 15th fret position. We're going to play that high G note and then bend that D up to the E, again targeting the A minor. And then we're coming up here to that high A minor pentatonic box, and really just the last few licks as the song fades out are all up there in that high A minor pentatonic. So he just kind of cuts loose with a few fast licks there, and that is the end of AC/DC's truest love song, again, true to the name. So from here, we are going to finish up the original Australian high voltage album with the last track, Show Business.